What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Cosmic Wonder, where we talk all things Marvel and MCU, and now we are officially 1 week away from Marvel Studios' panel at D23. It is next Saturday, September 10th. And something very interesting and very, very curious has happened today. A lot of names have been thrown out there that have apparently been cast over at Marvel Studios, and they come from a verified Twitter account, and some insiders are retweeting this tweet, which would seemingly make it appear like this casting report is true. However, it's very interesting because the report is coming from somebody not inside of our industry. But like I mentioned, major scoopers and some big outlets have backed up the casting report. And there are some truly big names on this casting report. And one of those big names is Henry Cavill, Superman himself. So it looks like we could actually have our Fantastic Four cast already, and possibly even some X-Men. And apparently, according to this reporter, if his information is accurate, we're supposed to get an announcement at D23 in a week from today. So let's go over this report. Let's go over all of these different actors and which roles they could be playing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And of course, if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest MCU news. Okay, so first things first, this report is coming from somebody named Emmett Kennedy. He does have a verified Twitter account, but here's the catch. He's a broadcaster on TalkSport 2. He has racing's #1 podcast, Final Furlong Pod, and when I say racing, I mean horse racing. He's been on CNN, RTE, ITV. He's a commentator, and he is a voiceover actor. So that's the catch. He doesn't actually have anything to do in our industry, although he does seem to be credible at his own job. That makes it really weird. It's a weird report because it's coming from somebody who is typically credible, but has nothing to do with Marvel Studios or anything in the MCU. But as I mentioned, his tweet, which we're about to go over, has been retweeted by some big insiders. So here is the tweet and list of names that he said is joining Marvel Studios. His tweet says, "I'm reliably informed that Marvel Studios have signed epic talent for Phase 5. Here's the list: John Boyega, Henry Cavill, Jodie Comer, Daisy Edgar Jones, John Krasinski, Giancarlo Esposito, and Denzel Washington." Now, the tweet ends by saying, "To be announced with some on stage by Kevin Feige at D23 Expo 2022. Hashtag Fantastic Four, She-Hulk, X-Men." He had a follow-up tweet that said, "Bring on D23 Expo 2022. Now, these are obviously huge names. And of course, we're going to be talking about the roles that they could possibly be playing. But first, let's talk about credibility. Now, I don't know anything about Emmett Kennedy. He seems to be respectable in his own industry. And of course, it's always possible that you could meet other people who know information that could be legitimate. Having said that, take this with a grain of salt because he's not in our industry. However, like I said, some big insiders like Daniel RPK have retweeted the list that he has put out there, giving him credit for it. Daniel RPK is known for his leaks, and he's been very accurate very lately. Also, Geek Vibes Nation recently put out that same list, also giving credit to Emmett. And Skylar Schuler over at the Diz Insider, who I know is very careful about what he says online, says that Daisy Edgar Jones as Sue Storm, wouldn't that be fantastic, with a little smirk face. So it seems like this list, or at least some people on this list, could be legitimately cast for some roles in the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and Marvel Studios. Now, I also want to add that John Boyega, of course, is from the Star Wars franchise. Grace Randolph recently said that Marvel Studios was looking at somebody from the Star Wars franchise. So this also goes with that report as well. Now, who could these actors be playing? Well, no offense to John Boyega, but I don't see him as Mr. Fantastic or the Human Torch. So that leads me to believe that he could be playing the Thing if he could be cast for the Fantastic Four. If he's been cast for the X-Men, well, there's actually a lot of people that he could be really good at. And actually seeing John Boyega, Giancarlo Esposito, and Denzel Washington on this list leads me to believe that we could have not necessarily a Days of Future Past movie, but maybe like a young Magneto and an older Magneto type of thing, where John Boyega could play a younger Magneto, and maybe Giancarlo or Denzel playing the older Magneto. I actually don't think they'll do that, but that's kind of the vibe I get here. But like I said, there are many X-Men that he could play. He could play Nightcrawler. He could play a version of Gambit, Havoc, Sabretooth. There's a lot of different X-Men characters that he could play. Now, like I mentioned, Giancarlo Esposito could be playing Magneto as well. However, he has mentioned recently, and very publicly, that he would love to play Professor X. And I think a lot of people have expressed that they would really be on board with this. Now, if he were to be cast as Professor X, and the fact that Denzel Washington is on this list, I want to say that Denzel Washington would be playing Magneto. However, I think Denzel is a little bit too old for the character, and I also don't think that he'll want to commit to the franchise for the next 10 to 15 plus years, which leads me to believe that he might actually be playing a villain role. Now, this could be a Fantastic Four villain, this could be an X-Men villain, or simply a Marvel villain in general. But of course, I am not against Denzel Washington joining the MCU in the slightest. I think it would be really cool to see him there. And Marvel Studios really has been getting some huge, big name actors recently. We've gotten Angelina Jolie, Salma Hayek, Michelle Yeoh, Tony Lau, Michelle Pfeiffer, Michael Douglas. It's a big list. It's not a small list of big actors. We've had really, really big actors in the MCU. And Denzel Washington could be the next one. Now, Jodie Comer, who you might know from the movie Free Guy, she was supposedly on a list of actors who could play Sue Storm. However, Skylar Schuler's tweet seems to imply that Daisy Edgar Jones is going to be playing Sue Storm. So if that's the case, then Jodie Comer could be up for an X-Men role. And I mean, there's just a ton of different characters that she could play. She could play Rogue, she could play Kitty Pryde, she could even play Jean Grey. It's not that hard to dye your hair red. There's just a whole bunch of characters that she could play, and I really hope that she is cast for some type of role in the MCU because I truly enjoyed her in Free Guy. And I actually personally think that she could make a very good Emma Frost. Now, we do have two names left, and they're kind of big, but they're also kind of controversial. And we'll start with Henry Cavill. I personally think that he would make an amazing Sentry. Now, there's been rumors going around for a while that Henry Cavill could play Sentry or Hyperion. Now, honestly, he would fit both of these characters perfectly. They are basically kind of variants of Superman, specifically Hyperion. Hyperion in the comics was the only survivor of the race of the Eternals from a dying world. Of course, we know the Eternals, but they did kind of change their origin in the MCU. As an adult, he would grow up to become a superhero known as Hyperion, and he would be on the team of superheroes known as the Squadron Supreme. Now, here's where things get interesting and connect to the MCU. His universe would eventually start to collide with another universe. Otherwise, what is known as Incursion, that has been mentioned in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and in the Secret Wars comic line, is kind of the main event that happens that brings all of the universes together, leaving only one universe. That's what happens to Sentry. His universe is destroyed, and he's left in a void. But of course, he goes on to fight with the Avengers and a bunch of other different heroes as well. And his powers are basically like Superman's. He has superhuman speed, strength, flight. He doesn't need to eat. His skin is basically impenetrable, but he does have superhuman healing as well. He has X-ray vision. He has enhanced hearing, but he does have things like cosmic energy manipulation, which is a little bit different from Superman. But basically what this means is that he has atomic vision, meaning that he can project beams of highly concentrated heat from his eyes, kind of like Superman does. So Hyperion is essentially Marvel's Superman. Now, Sentry is essentially the same. The origin story is way different, however. Sentry's name is Robert Reynolds, and he gets the power of 1,000 suns by breaking into an unknown laboratory because he was a meth head, and he ingests a serum. Now, this serum was meant to be a duplicate of the super soldier serum that Captain America took. However, it was supposed to be 1,000 times stronger. Robert took it and became the Sentry. Now, he was a meth addict before, however, he really cleans his act up once he becomes a superhero, and he ends up fighting alongside the Fantastic Four. They fight Doctor Doom and they defeat him. He becomes a mentor for Spider-Man actually, and he fights alongside a lot of other heroes. He has a lot of powers that Hyperion has, except he has some really cool things about him as well. He is basically immortal. He can resurrect himself. He has clairvoyance, so he's basically psychic. He has matter manipulation and can actually share his powers with other people. And he can actually turn invisible. And of course, he has all of those other superpowers like flight, superhuman speed, invulnerability, and a lot of other cool powers as well. So again, kind of like a Superman. And since Superman is played by Henry Cavill in the DC universe, I think we know that Henry Cavill would make a good Sentry or Hyperion in the MCU. Now, the controversial thing about that is that he would simply be switching from DC to Marvel, almost playing the same role, and it would kind of be a Marvel versus DC thing. But hey, I'm all for him joining the MCU. And the last one is John Krasinski. Now, this is controversial because it seemingly appeared that John Krasinski was only cast as Mr. Fantastic strictly for Multiverse of Madness and not the main MCU Mr. Fantastic. Kevin Feige had already stated that it was sort of a fan service to cast John Krasinski in Multiverse of Madness, so we didn't think that he would be the main one. However, he is on this list, so it looks like he could indeed still be playing the main Mr. Fantastic unless they cast him for another role, which would be very interesting, but I would be very curious to see who he played. However, I would love him to play Mr. Fantastic. So let me know what you think about all of these actors in this report and who you think they'll be playing. Leave your comments down below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest news. For live updates, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.